5, we are going to take a look at Git. So, what is Git? Git is a tool for tracking changes to files. It can be used by multiple people to edit the same files at the same time and track who made what changes. Today's lesson emphasizes a simpler scenario. How can you track changes you make to files in a directory and its subdirectories? Git has some vocabulary that it's helpful to know. One is working tree. The files and directories we have been creating. This is where the user makes changes to the files. There's a thing called an index, the staging area for tracked files that have been touched since the last commit. This is where the files changed in the working directory are queued up to be committed into the repository. The repository is an area where committed files reside. Every committed version of a file can be found here. And a commit itself, which is the act of creating a version of a change in the repository. So every time you make changes to files, they are recorded in the index. When you are ready, you commit them into the repository, and then you can go backwards and forwards through those changes in time. The commands we're going to cover are git init, which initializes Git in the directory, and files and directories in this directory are tracked by using git add dot. So we say, hey, we want to use Git within this directory, and then we can add files and folders into the repository, telling Git we want to track those files and folders. Git status, which is feedback on uncommitted changes to the working tree. Git add adds files to be tracked by Git. Git commit versions the files listed in the index and stores them into the repository. And Git log, which shows when files were versioned. So, we're going to use some of the tools that we've already discussed, and we're going to mock up a little example of what a project might look like. I am already in the Z project that I created for the last lesson. So I'm going to look at this, ls. I've got 2 files in there. I'm going to take a look at what I've got in each. Help CD has the help command for CD. I'm going to add something to that real quick. So I'm going to say cat append to help CD. I'm going to say enter. I'm going to say, make it really obvious that I've added something. I'm going to say this is my first add. And I'm going to press Control and D to indicate that I'm done, just to prove that that actually happened. You can see that I have added those lines to my file. And let's see what's in my input. Not a thing. So I'm going to say cat, and it doesn't matter if I append, so I'm just going to say redirect to my input. This is the first. And again, Control D is going to tell it that I'm done. It says, hey, make a subdirectory, so let's do that, mkdir. We're going to call this files. We're going to cd into files. And we're going to say cat pen to test _01. this is a test. Again, Control D creates it. I can prove it's there by doing ls. I can go up directory by doing cd ... and that's going to take me back to my project directory. I can do ls here, and I can see that I have a directory called files, and then I have two files called help_cd and my input. I'm going to do a quick ls-a to show you the hidden system files that help make all this directory structure work. Great. Let's pick up where we were just a minute ago. We're going to type in git init. It says it initialize an empty Git repository in C users admin JSON z project.git. Your path is going to be a little bit different depending on your name, but you should see the z_project and the z.git right there. Further, we can do ls-a. And we're going to see that a new directory has been created called .git. Dot is how Linux says a file should be hidden. So a regular ls, we're not going to see the git directory, but ls-a will be able to tell that we've got a git directory. The other thing that's changed is we have this master that has been added to our command prompt when we initialize git. And that is to tell us what branch we're on with git. Branch is outside the scope of this lesson, but one quick way to know whether or not you're in a git repository is looking for some sort of indicator like this one. So I've init a git project. Next, I think I'm going to need to add files. Oh, nope. We want to do git status first. So git stat status. And git tells me there's nothing on branch master, there are no commits yet, and that I have untracked files. And they are the files in the file directory and the two files in my current directory. And git is very helpful about telling me what I should do next. Nothing added to commit, but untracked files present. Used git add to track. So I will. Git add. And dot stands for everything in the directory and subdirectories. So I could list each individual file to track, but I'm basically saying just track everything that shows up in my ls command. And it tells me, hey, we're going to configure your files so that they're consistent with what we're being saved. And if I do git status, it says now changes to be committed, and it tells me the files that are ready to be committed. This is great. So I had files in my working tree. Those were the files that I'd already created. I created a Git repository. The Git repository detected that I had those files that needed to be changed. Those went into my index, and they are now waiting to go into the repository itself. And the way we push something into the repository is with git commit. Git. I'm going to use the -a flag, which basically means all. And I'm going to use the -m flag, which means this is my commit message. It's important that you do the -m flag and give it a message. if you leave out the -m and a message, it's going to ask you to do a bunch of things that you don't want to do just yet. So I'm going to run it, and Git is going to tell me, please tell me who you are. Run git config global and a user email and git config global username to set up Git. So on this system, I've never set up Git. I've never used Git. And Git is dependent on knowing who I am. So I'm going to do what it told me to do. Git config global user.email, and I'm going to use me at mine.com. And now I'm going to say git config global user dot name me. Now, if you are doing this professionally or personally and want to share your work, it's going to be important that you have a real email address here and you use your real name. Because this is a test project for me, I'm using me and mine. But use a real email address and use a real name as you set yours up. Now, let's see if we can arrow back up to our git commit, and we're going to try to commit again. And since Git knows who we are, it says, hey, I have taken 3 files and I have inserted them into the repository. Fantastic. So if I say git status, it says I'm all up to date. There's nothing on branch master to commit, and my working tree is clean. So we're going to do some things to dirty our tree back up again. Let's add a file. Cat and new file. And this is a new file. Control and D. And then I'm going to append some more to an existing file. So cat, I want to make sure I do append, help, cd, and I'm going to add a space. I'm going to give myself a little break. I'm going to say, this is my second set of changes. And let's use exclamation. Ooh, that's good. Boom. And again, Control D tells me that I'm done editing. Now if I say git status, it tells me that in an untracked file, which is new file, well, the file exists and there are changes in it. And if you want to start tracking it, you need to add it. It also has detected the change that I've made to help CD. And it gives me some information about how I can roll those changes back or roll those changes forward. In this case, I just want to add both those files into Git. So I'm going to do git add dot, and it's going to find my new file and add it. And I can confirm that by doing git status. And it says, hey, both these files are ready to be pushed in. Fantastic. I'm going to use my up arrows to find my commit command. I'm going to change this to say this is my second commit. And it's going to tell me that, yep, I was able to commit those files. And I can do git status to see everything is caught up. Now, I want to actually see what's in the repository. So I'm going to just say git and log. And that's going to show me the two commits that have been made. The first one at 11:36 and the second one at 11:39. And the notes that I put in. So the message, this is my first commit and this is my second commit. This is great. It tells me that I have made commits and when I've made those commits. But I'd like to see a little bit more. So I'm going to try this git log -p, and it should show us detailed information on the git command. So it's opened me up in a tool very much like less. I can scroll up and down through my notes, and I can see that, for example, try this again. In my help CD file, it's detected that I have this new set of changes, and it tells me where I have those new set of changes. In my first commit, we can see that I just put the files in to begin with, and it tells me what the contents of each one of those files were. So I've created some files. I've initialized a Git file tracking tool. I've added files into that tool. I have made changes to files, and I've tracked those changes and viewed those changes. That is our introduction to Git. Feel free to play around with this, add things, remove things, check the logs, and see how things have changed. Thanks.